Hello and welcome to the vintrace Vintage webinar for 2021. My name is Chris Dorr and I'm the Customer Support Manager here at vintrace. Today's session should run for approximately an hour. We'll cover a variety of topics. We'll be recording this webinar as well to upload to YouTube, and we'll email out the link, so if you can't stick around and watch the whole webinar, or if you've got some colleagues or friends that you want to send it to, you can point them to our YouTube page and subscribe there to get all our webinars. Throughout the session, if you've got any questions, please send those through using the questions feature, and our team will reach out. Likely after the session, we'll help get those answered, so please send those through. As a basic outline, I'll be covering the harvest workflow to getting you set up. So obviously setting up our growers and blocks. We'll look at fruit sampling, actually booking in fruit intakes and fruit receivals into the winery. We'll look at crushing and pressing your fruit and also managing your ferments. At the end of the session, I'll switch over to the mobile app as well, and we'll perform a lot of the same work there. So all the crushing and that kind of stuff that you can do on the mobile app. So if you haven't already, make sure you download the app and check it out and follow along with me. Alright, so let's get started. So the first place I'll take a look at is just a couple of little setup pieces to make sure that we're actually ready for Vintage 2021. And the very first place I want to go is into our setup icon down the bottom there. And this is where obviously all our options and menus and things are hiding in here. And I'll just want to look at the winemaking section and vintages. So obviously the very first thing we need to make sure is setting up Vintage 2021. I've already done it here, but it's just as simple as clicking New Vintage, putting in the year and making sure that's saved in there. So now any batches or fruit intakes that I do, I can assign 2021 to that so that we get the right information where it needs to be. Once we've got that configured, the next thing I'll have a look at is under our general section here, we've got a category called defaults. And what this will allow us to do is save a little bit of time on the data entry. Obviously you're going to be spending a fair bit of time trying to make wine and crush some fruit, and you know, if we can save seconds here and there in vintrace, that's handy. So the idea is I can set my 2021 vintage as the default, and then all the batches and fruit intakes I create will actually be pre-filled, so I don't have to select it each and every time. There are a couple of other options as well that you might find useful to set as a default. So you'll see here I've just got some very generic scales, crusher and press selected, but if you only weigh your fruit on one set of scales, you can just set that as the default. You don't have to select that at all. It'll be done for you. If you've got multiple presses, you may not find that useful, so you can just leave it blank, and then you'll have the option to actually select it when you come across any of those drop downs. So it's worth having a look through this list and filling in anything that you're filling in each and every time, whether it's your lab. You might only get your lab work done in your own lab or an external lab. You can pre-fill that and save a lot of time. So it's worthwhile going through and making sure you set everything up there to speed things up a little bit. Alright, so now that we've got a couple of options set up there, let's actually jump in and have a look at the blocks tab here. So it's a little block icon there. And once you open this up, it should give you a list of the blocks that you've already got in your database. So hopefully that's all set up fairly nicely. You might need to add and change some of those, which we'll have a quick look at in a few moments to see how we can do that. But this screen here is very similar to the vessels tab if you've been using the new interface, which is the vessels tab is the tank one, which you start out on. So it has all the same sort of options to filter and add columns with this table. So for example, I can hit the little gear icon here and configure what I want to see. So this is the default view, but I want to change that a little bit. I'm not too worried about the number of rows for my blocks. It's not too important to me, but I would like to see the BOME readings that I put in. Obviously I can then keep an eye on things a little bit closer, so make those changes, hit the little X, and it will take out my rows column and add the BOME in. So this will then start showing samples against those blocks, which we'll touch on shortly. And I'll just select 2021, so that would actually show me BOMEs here. So you'll see on this Chardonnay block, I've got a BOME of 11, recorded on the 12th of January. So it's worthwhile having a look at that and adjusting that to your needs. And I guess the other important thing is, as I mentioned, getting all your blocks actually configured. So the simplest place to do it is just clicking our big green plus icon up the top right, and we want to add a block in. So this will just give us the basic fields to add in. So if you've got some a new contract with a grower, or you've just got another block coming online at one of your vineyards, you can add it in here quite easily. So I'll just call mine East Block C. Here you can obviously put in the variety of that fruit. It'll also allow you to add in a new variety, so if you do get something in different, you can do that there. Again, the number of rows we can put in. You see here it's pre-filled my grower, so that was one of the defaults I had set up in the setup section we looked at before, so I don't have to fill that in. So if you're only sourcing your own fruit and you're not going to purchase any fruit, you can always pre-fill that grower option in as well. And of course our vineyard needs to be filled in. So it'll bring up a list of the current vineyards. If you need to add a brand new one, again, type the name in and you can click the little add as a new vineyard to fill that in. And we do have the ability to tag blocks as well, so that you can use that primarily for filtering and searching in here. So if you actually add some tags onto your blocks, you can filter down just to a list of blocks that follow that. So whether it's an organic block or something of that nature, you can take out the other options to just view those. Okay, cool. So I've added a block in there, nice and simple. So you see it in there, East Block C is my Chardonnay block, so that one's in, and it's just rinse and repeat to get all your blocks in there. So simply just the plus and then add block. So that was a very basic setup of the block. Obviously, we do have a bit more information on those blocks, so you can actually open up one of those by just clicking on the name of the block, or you can use our search up the top left there and type in the block code to bring their screen up, which is our block overview. And what the block overview is just looking at all of your blocks in a bit more detail. So you'll see the familiar tabs across the top there. So we've got block details, vineyard details, and a few others that we'll look at. So if you need more information, this is the best place to look. So if you do need to add in additional fields, you can always click the little pencil icon against these, and you'll see there's numerous tabs of plenty of different fields that can be set up on your block. So if you want to put in an expected yield or the clone of that particular block, if it's an estate block or not, so you can go through and add in all that information to make sure it's all correct and has the information that you really want to record there. So I guess the first two tabs here, we're looking at the block details and the advanced details. That's just outputting what we've got there. So again, if I click the edit option, it's just that same screen there to include any of that additional information if required. We've got the vineyard grower details here, so I didn't actually add any of these in. This was already on my East Vineyard and my JX2 Wines grower. I only created the East Block C, so it just used the existing details because it was a new block that we put in. But if you do need to make changes, it's here. Anything that you edit on this vineyard will obviously adjust all the other blocks within that vineyard. So it has some fairly basic things, obviously the name, regions, etc. For our New Zealand customers, it will have the SWINS code in there as well. So if that's a requirement for you to track that, this is the place to come in and enter it. It should just be one of these fields in here, and then you can have a look at your your wines and see the breakdown of the different vineyards and SWINS codes. So just make note of that if that's a requirement for you. And of course, editing the grower. So that'll actually just use the address book sort of dialogue. So if you go to edit a grower or a lab or anything in the address book, it's the same sort of information here. So you can go through and put in contact details or notes or anything else that needs to be put against a particular grower. So that's, I guess, editing and putting a bit more detail into those, so you can go through all your blocks there and put that real additional information on those first couple of tabs there. So if we move on to the lab section, this screen here is essentially just going to show the sampling information for this particular block. So obviously this is a brand new one. We're not going to have anything in here just yet. But as we start to record some samples and seeing how our fruit's maturing over the pre-vintage period, you'll be able to get a list of results and a chart. I'll just bring up this one here where we do have a Beaumet reading. And so you see here it's got the metrics. So as you put in more metrics, you'll get those going down the page, and it will give you the most recent value and the one before that as well. So you can have a little calculated rate of change there. So just a quick snapshot of where that block's up to. You can always click the check boxes as well, and you'll start to get a chart down the bottom. So in this case, it's just our single dot, because that's all I've put in there. But obviously, the more information you put into to the maturity data side of things, the better the chart will look down the bottom. The benefit of this is the vintage drop down. So if you've been using vintrace for a number of years, you can actually go back and say, all right, I would like to see what was happening in 2020. When were we sampling this? What were the figures at that point in time, as opposed to current? So you can really do a nice comparison over a couple of years if you've got that data in there. We do have a record a fruit sample button, so if you open up a block and you want to just quickly put in some info, you can do that from here. We've got an actual purpose-built sampling console, which we'll look at right after this, to do it in a bit of bulk and speedier sort of fashion. But if you've just got a quick result to put against this particular block, you can use a record a fruit sample and enter that in. Alright, so let's move on to the seasonal tab here. So this one is again looking at this block on a per vintage basis, and it does a number of things. So down the bottom you'll see sections there for bookings and fruit receivables. So as you start booking in fruit for this vintage, or if you're looking at an older vintage, you'll be able to see the fruit receivables, but it just gives you a summary of the season. So you can see that we had fruit come in on this particular day. We expected maybe 5 tons, only got 4. So it's a good sort of indicator of how that block was performing, I guess, during a year. And the top section here is, I guess, just some information that you can actually record against the block per vintage again. And that's what we call this assessment feature here. So you can simply click new assessment, and there's a number of bits and pieces you can put in. So we can say that we're going to machine pick this. We're expecting to get 6 tons. Earliest harvest date's another good one. So you can go through and fill out as much information that makes sense to you. You can upload a spray report, any comments, and then save that, and that'll actually update these fields here to show the information you recorded. And this assessments tab here just lists them out. So if you're doing multiple assessments, you'll be able to view, I guess, who's put that information in there and what was actually recorded. So it does give you all that information sitting in there for everyone to view, essentially. And we'll get to it a little bit later on, but the app is a good spot to record some of this. So you can, while you're actually out in the vineyard, you can look up this block and then actually start recording some of this information as well. So instead of writing it down in your notebook and then getting back to your desk, you can actually just go straight into the app, put in some of those key fields there, and it'll be sort of showing up straight away, so that people back in the office can take a look and start making some decisions. And the last one is a fruit placement report out of all these tabs. So this one's going to be nice and blank at the moment because we haven't actually received any fruit for vintage 2021. But the idea is it will give you all the bulk wines that have any of this fruit in it, and if you've dispatched or bottled that wine, you'll be able to see the information. So if you're really wanting to go from the block forwards to bottle or tank, you'll be able to see that information. So if you click here, we'll go back to vintage 2020. You can see I've got a couple of batch codes here in different vessels, and it shows me where that fruit's gone and what the volumes of those current vessels are. So if you're looking for that information, you can start at the block as opposed to starting at the batch code, really. Alright, so that's our block overview and most of our block setup. So obviously we are in the block little tab there. You can go through setting up these blocks and just making sure everything's ready to go and configured pre-vintage, so that way when things are kicking off, you've got all the blocks there ready to go, and hopefully a lot of the data's already in there for you. Alright, so next we'll move on to the sampling console side of things. So maturity data will go in there. We did sort of see that when we were looking at these blocks on that lab tab. But we've got under the little more options icon down the bottom there, and in the harvest section we've got the maturity samples option here. And so this is what we call the sample set console. It works a little bit similar to the lab console, I guess, if you're familiar with that, in that the top section here is our filters and searches. So if you were wanting to bring up a particular grower's blocks that you wanted to sample, you can use that information up the top. At the moment there's nothing in there except potentially just the one block that I previously recorded. The reason being, you need to actually set up each block to be sampled. So we don't automatically fill in all the blocks for you, so that way you can decide which blocks you're actually going to be sampling. So to do that, you can use these two buttons down the bottom right. So there's the add sample set, so if you've just got a single block that you want to add in to be ready to sample, or the quick add if you've got numerous, which will be the more common way. If you've got a bunch of blocks that you need to sample, the quick add's where to go. So in here you can select a region or grower depending on what you're actually going to be sampling for. So I'll just select my JX2 Wines grower, and you'll see it brings in all of those blocks that are under that grower. And it's just a case of selecting whichever ones we plan on sampling. So you can simply click them or hit all and put them all in there. And then we just need a bit of information filled in on the right hand side. So it's again pre-filled our owner and vintage because we've got those defaults, so that's saved us a bit of time. The other key one is this analysis template. So most of the time you'll be sampling the exact same tests for each lot of fruit, and you don't want to have to key those in each time, so that's why I've got an analysis template here. And I'm hoping I can use this fruit intake one here. We'll just see what that comes up with, but you can also set up a brand new one here. So if you click the little plus icon, I might just create a new one while we're here, so I'll give it a name of maturity samples. And the benefit of doing this and having your own one set up is in the default option there is default for fruit sampling. So once I select this will actually be pre-filled again, because we are going to always be testing those same few tests. Down the bottom is the metrics, so you can actually add in, we'll go for Bome, pH, and TA. So those will be the three that I'll always want to test. If I decide I want to run a sample and exclude one or add something else, that's fine. This is just sort of the default three, and I can then chop and change and do it a little bit differently if I like. But that's basically going to be my default template. And obviously our vintage is defaulted, and I'll leave the rest blank because I don't need those. Okay, so now that I've saved it, you'll see there's a few more entries in the list. So all those different blocks I selected, they'll get their own codes as well. So each vintage there'll be a new code for each different block. And the reason for that is you can actually generate some little labels for those. So you might send these out to the growers and they can print out the labels, and then that way when they bring in the fruit for sampling, they can attach those labels so that you know exactly what fruit it is, and you'll be able to quickly look up based off that label which block that fruit's come from. So you can generate multiple labels so that if you're sampling a few times, and it'll just be very basic like this, where it's got the grower name, the vineyard, the block name, and then obviously the variety. So that's you'll get one of those for each of the different blocks that we selected. Alright, cool. So back into our sample set console, and we can actually start entering some data in now. So the simple way to do it is on the right hand side there. You just click add against your block. So I'll just do it for this Pinot block here. And it's very much like a normal lab analysis if you've been entering those before. Obviously all our date and time and operator as usual. And then it's obviously got our block that we've selected and the template that I've just created now. So that's nice and easy to use. The 3 metrics I selected are just sitting there, so I can now punch those results in. And as I mentioned, if you want to add in additional tests, you just click add line, put the next metric in, and likewise if you're not testing something, you can remove it. So if you didn't do pH on one of your tests, take it out and you can just save the Beaume and the TA. So it's sort of up to you how you want to record it. So there are a few other little differences just from your usual analysis on a wine. There is a type option there. If you're doing bunch or berry samples, you can record the rows or vines or area for that sample. So there's just a few different little bits and pieces that you can report on for a sampling. So once I save that and confirm it all, you'll just see that the number of samples has gone up to 1. So you can always see sort of how many samples you've put through on a particular block to see maybe if you've missed one or why something hasn't been sampled. You might not have put the data in after testing it, so you can keep an eye on those figures. Once you've got your samples in, you can click on the actual block there, and there is a show history option. So this will give you all the different samples you've recorded. So this is the one I've just put in now. I can click view and see those results there. So just like viewing a completed transfer or any other operation, that'll come up with whatever's been recorded. And again, you've got the usual reverse or edit options if you need to actually fix those up, if there's a double up or a typo or any of those kind of things. So those same buttons apply as per usual. Alright, so clicking add is one way to get your results in. The other option is using the app, which we'll, as I mentioned, get to towards the end of this session. So another way to upload your results is by using this upload function here, and you can simply just download the file format. It's fairly straightforward to fill in. It'll just have columns for your results, so your Beaumes, your pH, TA, based on the templates and everything you've used. You just fill that in with results at the end of the day when you're all happy and done. You can come back to the upload here and just select the file. Once you click import, it'll check for any errors and any sort of configuration problems, and then it will upload and put them all in at once. So you will then obviously all our numbers jump up by 1 depending on how many results went in there. So if you prefer to work that way, that's an alternative to just clicking add on each of those. And I guess the lucky last piece of the sampling that we'll look at is just reporting on that. So obviously there's no use just putting the data in there without getting it out. So you can click in the reports console here, and it will give you a number of different reports. So this is just looking at our reports console, and it's in the fruit samples section. So you can navigate your way via the reports console icon if you like. So in here, there's a couple of different formats. So there's a couple of charts in the middle there, so you can do similar to what the block overview did a few moments ago. But if you just need to send results to a grower, you can simply just fill in the grower name and obviously put your dates for whatever period that you're sampling for, and then just hit generate, and that will actually give you a file that should include all the results for them, whether it's a PDF or an Excel sheet, and then that can be sent off, or you can directly email to that grower using our little email function there. Alright, so that's it for our sampling console. So just to sort of recap that, we headed into the more options section there, and then in the maturity samples area. First step, as I mentioned, is actually creating the blocks to sample, the sample sets of each block. We use the quick add to do that nice and easily. And then it's clicking add or using our spreadsheet to upload those results to get that information in there. Alright, so let's move on now to looking at fruit intakes and booking in fruit. And again, there's a number of ways to do it, but we'll start with the trusty fruit intake console. So you can click on the little bin icon there, and that will take you to the fruit intake console. So this is where you'll manage a lot of the bookings, intakes. You can even start crushing from here. So a lot of that sort of stuff can be managed from here. We've also got the harvest calendar. This is one of the ways you can get to it. The little calendar button, and that does a lot of the same functionality, obviously in a calendar format. So I guess first things first, let's book in some fruit to come into the winery, which we can use a little new icon down here, and we've got the scheduled booking option. So this is our new booking screen. It has obviously quite a lot of information that you can fill in. The left hand side is the basic and required stuff, so obviously when the fruit's expected to arrive, so your date and times. The owner of the fruit, the owner of the fruit is an important one, so whose fruit that is, whether it's yours or a contract client's or anyone else. Just make sure that you set that up so that way if you need to run reports for a client on the fruit that you crushed or received for them, you can use it based on that owner field. Just below that is where the fruits come from. So if it's from one of our blocks, we can simply just pop that in there. So I'll select my East Block C, and that will just fill in the rest there, so it knows the grower, it knows the variety, and it knows that region, of course. And again, I've got my 2021 vintage defaulted there, so that's already filled in for me. So that's it. If I'm happy with just the basic info of booking in my fruit, that's all I need to do. If you want, on the right hand side, we do have a lot more information. So you can put in the estimate of tons. So we'll say we're expecting 5 tons from that block, whether it's hand machine picked, if you want to record the harvester or the carrier, any of those other fields in there, you can fill that in, and then that'll be displayed on some of the reports and the booking sheets that you can get. So once we save that, you'll see in the intake console now, I've got booking number 28, so that just counts its way up as we book fruit in. It's got the date and time selected, and you'll notice in here this is a little useful section. It's got 5 tons that I've booked, haven't received anything yet, and we obviously haven't crushed anything. So you can always keep an eye on where you're up to with these columns. So once you receive it, you obviously need to make sure you process it. So that's a good spot to actually keep an eye on some of that. And there is a summary at the bottom, so once you start to get obviously lots of bookings in there, you'll be able to see what's still to crush based on those figures. Now that I've got a booking created, even though we haven't received the fruit, you can write your work order to crush the fruit, so I can go ahead and do that in advance. So you might be doing it the night before, fruit's coming in. You want the team to know what to do with the fruit, so you can actually do that all from this console here. If you click the down arrow, and we've got the crush option here, and it'll give you the option here to use a manual work order or to use a work order template. So we won't cover the work order templates today, but they are very useful at this time of the year. So if you're obviously using the same sort of processes and notes and everything that you fill in on a work order, the same lot of additives, use a template. That'll save a lot of time, and really you're just applying the fruit intake number, the batch codes, and that kind of stuff, and it creates the work order. So it does save a lot of work. We do have some webinars that cover that, so please check those out. But we'll just start with a manual work order for this one. And this is a screen you'll certainly get familiar with if you're not already, and this is the extraction or crush operation. And essentially the left hand side is our fruit, so kind of like your source vessel, and then on the right hand side will be our destination, so the fermenters and batch codes and volumes and everything that we want to use. So because I used the booking that I'd already created, it's pre-filled this code, and I'd recommend going that way anyway, so it saves you having to fill in anything over here. So we really just need to fill out the right hand side, which is the tanks we want to use, the batch codes we want to use. So I'll go ahead and select some stuff here. So we'll use F001, so that's my fermenter, and then obviously being a new vintage and a new batch here, I'll actually create a new code. So you can hit the little green plus, and we can call this one 21 Yarra Valley Chardonnay 1. So go through and put in your code of whatever you like. You can fill in your descriptions. You'll see a lot of my fields are defaulted here because I've gone through that earlier. So really it's just the name I need to give for that batch code. So now that that's created, I can reuse that again. So we might actually go into 2 different tanks. So we'll go into F002, and I can then reuse that same code in that second tank. So you don't have to create it every time, just the one time, and it's there. So we've got that batch now. We can go into those 2 separate tanks. So what you might like to do is put your free run into one tank, pressings into another, and then you can leave the volumes blank, but if you're expecting a certain volume, that will then print out on the work order, so it kind of gives the team an expected volume that they might be getting to. So just for the sake of it, I could say we're expecting 2,000 litres in that tank. If I left that one blank, there wouldn't be anything on the work order, so it's worthwhile if you need that information. While we're here, we do have a couple of these little icons here. So the 2 most useful ones are the little lab beaker. So if you want to request some lab work to be done on either of these tanks, you can click on that one, and again go through and select your metrics or use our templates. So you might want to maybe put a fruit intake template on there, or any number of things. So if you need samples taken and tested, use the little lab samples icon there. And the other one is the little sort of test tube icon there. So that's for additions. So if you're making adds as you're crushing, this is a place to go, and it allows you to add different things to different tanks. So you just go through the list of tanks and select that icon. And again, we've got additive templates. So if you're doing standard adds each time, you might have standard adds for your whites or reds, or do it for different varieties. You can create those as templates, and then it will fill in the additive and the rate of add if that's fairly standard as well. And then you can just go in and adjust those as you work. So we don't have one in there at the moment, but it's just a case of giving it a name called crush adds, selecting the additives that you want to put in, then you can just give it a rate of whatever would go in. So that'd just be my template and the standards. Each time I use that, I can configure it and say, well, maybe we're going to put more of something in there. So you can adjust it as you go, as well as add in something additional. So it's just a bit of a shortcut if you are filling in the same additives every single time to create it as a template, and then that will save you having to do that. Alright, so I'll just put that in there. We'll leave that as is for now. At the bottom left as well, we do have a couple little fields here. So as I mentioned earlier, I defaulted my crusher and press. I've just got the one at my winery, but if you want to make changes to that, you can obviously configure those or remove them if you didn't use one of those items. And we've also got the fruit process here, so if you do whole bunch, destemming, any other sort of things while you're crushing that you want to record, that fruit process is a good place for it. Alright, so I'll add that to my work order. And this will take us to the new work order screen that you're probably all fairly familiar with. So because I went through the fruit intake console first, it's kind of filled in some of it already. So you'll see it's got the extraction I just put in there now. It's got in some of the dates and that kind of thing at the top, but you can go through and adjust that as needed. So we can put our instructions in here as well. Or you can use standard notes. So if you haven't used standard notes before, I recommend having a look at these. But for example, I've got some default notes that I put in for a press job or a transfer, and all I have to do is select that. It fills this in for me, and then I can add my own additional comments below. So those notes will be the first thing we see on our work order, and then it will go into my extraction job. And if I needed to, I could add in some additional jobs. So if we rack this elsewhere, you could include that as a second job and have it all in the same work order. So I'll save this work order now. And that will download a work order for us that we can take a look at. Alright, so you'll see here is my work order. So it's got obviously the dates and everything at the top as usual. It's got my instructions here, so I didn't have to type much of that, and it's already at the top. So definitely worthwhile having a look at your standard notes and making sure they're up to date and make sense. And then you'll see it goes into my my job here. So the extraction, it's got the booking number, the block, the estimated tons, 5 tons. It does give you a section there to put in bins as well, so you can have this printed off and the team can write in the bins and weights using this work order if you like. There is a couple of other options you can download from the intake console to do this as well. If you're using the app, you can sort of bypass this altogether, but you do have that option in there. And then you'll see it goes into the fermenters that we've selected. So we've got F1 and F2, the same batch codes in there. Obviously, you'll see here's the target volume, so I put the 2,000 litres on this one. I didn't put it on the second tank, so that one's blank. And then obviously the additions that I put into that tank there, so they'll be included sort of in the middle there, so that there's spots to fill in batch numbers and stuff for tracking that. And then finally you've got a section for your dips and volumes, so the solar team can write in the post dip, and then we can enter that when we actually go to update this note. Okay, so that's my work order. So that's ready to go for when the fruit actually gets here. The team can get onto that. And then obviously, yeah, the fruit intake will happen next, because as you can see, we've only got the 5 tons booked. We haven't received it, and obviously, of course, we haven't processed it, but we plan to process it with that work order. So when the fruit arrives at the winery, it's just as simple as clicking the Arrive button next to that particular intake. and you'll end up on this screen here, the intake details. So this is really just getting the actual weights in there. You'll see the right hand side's all filled out because I've put this as a booking. It's got the owner, the block, all of that stuff already there because I booked it in, so I don't have to do it twice. So when we're putting in the weights, there's a couple of options. So on the fruit tab here, this is just a total weight. So if you're maybe weighing a truck, or you're doing this after the fact, and it's the quickest and easiest way to do it, you can just do it here. If you want to put in each bin or type of bin, you can go through and add a line for each bin, put in gross and tare weights, and then that'll work out the net weight of each bin. So you can go through that. So if you have the team write that out and you want to record it, you can do it this way. But we'll just keep it easy on myself today, and we'll just do it as a total. So put in my gross and tare, and that will calculate the net weight there. If you don't want to put in the bin information, there is an option to put in the number of bins that you weighed, so that 10 bins arrived. We did actually weigh and count 10 bins. That is sort of a little extra check instead of actually putting in the individual weights of all of them. Okay, so that's all we have to fill in to get our intake in the system. There is the option on the last two tabs here to fill in a bit of extra stuff. So obviously some analysis on the fruit intake can go in there as well. If you want to record the MOG or even a grading against that fruit for maybe the quality, you can do that as well. And there's some costing information there that you can put, that can be entered in later down the track, but it's there if you need it. And lastly, there's photos as well. So if you've got any files or photos that you want to upload for that intake, whether it's just a picture of the fruit or something else, that can be done here. If you're doing it via the app, it's super easy. There's an option just to use the camera on your phone, and you can upload that as you go along as well. Alright, so let's hit OK. And now we'll get the intake delivery screen. So this is really just the information about the delivery of the fruit. So really we need the date and time. And as I mentioned earlier, if you've got multiple sets of scales, so if you have some weighed off site, or if you've got two different sets, you can select where it was weighed. And if you want to record truck numbers or the time a truck came in and out of the winery, if you need to know that sort of information, you can put that all together in there. And if there was potentially two different blocks on the one delivery, you can click the add load button and go through the same screen that we're on. So you can go through and put in another 3 tons from block B if that's what you need to do. Alright, so I'll save that and confirm we will take delivery of this fruit. Okay, so once you've saved the fruit intake, you will get a intake receipt sort of docket generated for you. So it'll just have information about really what we've just entered. So obviously your winery's information will be at the top there, and your logo if that's all configured, addresses and everything there. But it's got the vineyards and the grower information on this side. So we had the East Block C selected, and then it just has the tonnages that we recorded. If you put in blocks or analysis or anything, bins or analysis or anything else, that'll be printed down the bottom there. So basically as much information you put in is what's printed out on this document. And it does have a section here to be signed off. So if you need to have someone go ahead and sign the docket to say that yes, this is what I received, that's down the bottom there as well. So if we go back into our fruit intake console, you'll see that we've got the received amount is updated to say 6 tons. So we know we've got some fruit now in the system, but we obviously need to go ahead and process it. So we just get rid of that 6 tons that's sitting there. So we've got the work order already pre-prepared. There's a couple of ways to find it if you, don't have the number or you can't remember or any of those things. So the first way is you can click our little down arrow here. And if we click view, there is a crush note option. So clicking on that will tell me we've already scheduled something on work order number 13. So you can go ahead and complete it from here. If you're not in the fruit intake console, you can always use the trusty jobs section, and that will have our extraction job there. So we can go ahead and complete it from either of the two ways, and actually then end up with some juice in tank. So before I go ahead and complete that, we'll actually go and have a look at the harvest calendar. So as I mentioned, you could go into the fruit intake console first and get there, but the other option is just to use the calendar icon. And with this calendar icon, you'll see there's already our extraction there because we're looking at the jobs mode, but there is the harvest mode of this as well. And so what you can see when you're looking at the harvest calendar is a list of all the bookings and I guess their statuses and all the same information that the console gives you. So you'll see that we've got the 5 tons of Chardonnay that were booked in for today. And if I click on that, it gives me a bit more information. I can still go through and perform the intake with the arrival button just like we did earlier. And you can make all those edits and you can write crush notes and that kind of thing. So everything that you do in the intake console, you can do from the harvest calendar. I guess the benefit of the harvest calendar is you can obviously view it in a few different ways, but it's very easy to actually adjust bookings as things change. So I can click in here and say we've got a booking to come in on this particular day, that particular block, so that'll slot into there. But if things change, I can just drag and drop it around and move it from time to time. So obviously if your schedule changes a bit and you have growers giving you different times and that kind of thing, you can always just use the calendar to make that easier. With the intake console, you can still edit the booking. You'll just end up on this screen where you're going to change the time. So if it's just easier to drag and drop, use the calendar, and you can do it over the day or the week depending on how you're kind of looking at things. So that's one of the benefits of using that calendar, but all the same functionality that we've looked at with the intake console applies exactly to this calendar. Alright, so let's get back to our work order from before, and we will actually go ahead and complete this now by hitting complete. And we'll hit complete on this job here, and it will bring up the work order we had before. So all this stuff we looked at before, obviously our tanks and everything. You'll see now on the left hand side that this line's been entered in, so this is just saying that we do have 6 tons available that we've actually received. So you'll see there's also a docket number 19. So if you're ever looking up a fruit intake, it'll have its own docket number, which would have been on the document we had a look at a few moments ago. You don't really need to change a whole lot here, so by default we're going to assume that you're crushing the full 6 tons into these vessels here. If that's not the case, if you left a portion behind, you can update it and say that we might have crushed 3 tons on this work order. Then you can go ahead and do a second work order for the remainder if that's what happened. Alright, so I'll just fill in, I guess, the last bits here. So you can put in your dips, pre and post dips from that extraction if you've got that information. If you're crushing red fruit, you will be selecting the must option. It will give you the little warning if you don't, and from that it'll actually allow you to put in a tonnage. So you might be putting, say, 3 tons into a tank, and you can sort of estimate your extraction rate. So it'll still show the 3 tons that you've got, but it'll kind of work off the litres there. So if you're doing musts with any of your red fruit, it'll kind of switch over to this tonnage versus extraction rate mode. But you can always use the toggle option here, which will switch between the two. So if you're got dips to put in, you can always go back to that. So once we've got some volumes in, you'll see down the bottom it'll give you a total of all the tanks. So I've got 4,100 litres into those, but it gives you an extraction rate of 683 litres per tonne for the overall 6 tonnes, so that you know, hey, that's way off. You might have made a typo somewhere, so you can always keep an eye on that figure just to make sure it seems reasonable. You haven't made a mistake anywhere. And of course we've got our additives in here, so if anything changed or you haven't got the amounts in, you can go through and do that, as well as any of the stock routing. So you see I've got some stock of my DAP in the lab storage area, so you go through and just select those to make sure that your costs get passed on to the wine, and that it's also taking care of the amount of stock you've got on hand for those additives. So make sure that that's obviously filled in. And once we're happy with volumes and additives and everything, we can then just go ahead and put our date and time in and save that job. Oops, I left that as a must. So I'll go back to pressings. And that is now completed. So we've got that work order completed. If we were to go back now and have a look at our fruit intake console, so that's the bin icon, you'll see that this is now showing 6 tonnes processed, and as you actually work through a booking, it'll change colour. So I think once it's received and processed, they'll just turn different shades of green and kind of indicate that you've made some progress on those. But we've now processed that. One way to have a look at the juice that we've got is again using this view option, and it'll give you a juice must option, so that will tell you where it is. It's kind of like the fruit placement option we looked at a little bit earlier. So it's showing you the batch code and the vessels and everything based off that intake. So you could simply click onto that, and here we'll see our brand new 2021 Chardonnay in tank. It'll give you obviously all the same details you're used to here, but it's obviously our 2021 product that we've just put in. So you see a J for juice. It's not fermented yet, so it's kind of just giving you that indication with a little icon there that it's a juice still. And our ferment states here will be unfermented, which we'll tackle in a short while. So that's, I guess, the process of crushing your fruit. So we initially had our booking set up in the intake console with the scheduled booking option, and then we created a work order using this crush press option. Obviously that's forward planning a bit, and not everyone has the time or prior knowledge, I guess, of all that information. So you can do it all after the fact. So you can record an unplanned arrival of fruit if it's already happened and you've got the final tonnages. It's all the same sort of process. So you can put in your 5 tonnes in here. It's just you'll have to fill out obviously the block information on some of this, as it's not already sort of pre-supplied from the booking that we had. So I'll just put in another intake while we're at it, and that'll just confirm the delivery, and that one's in there. So all we really did is skip the booking step, and we've got our 5 tonnes received. And because we didn't have it pre-planned, obviously we couldn't have created a work order for that job. So you can still use the same option here, and you still can write a work order at this point, but you do have the ability to use the crush press now option, which is really just doing it as a operation after the fact, so it knows your 5 tonnes, and you can put in your final volumes and save it that way. So it does give you the flexibility to do it either way, depending on what you like. It's just a couple of different options to start out with, and I guess the work order versus the operation, I guess, after the fact. Okie dokie, cool. So I will actually just crush this one while we're looking at it, so that we've got something else in tank. So again, I'll just go into F3, and because this one's a red, I'll actually put it as a must, so you can kind of see how that will all play out. So if I don't select must with this red fruit, you get a little warning there, which will tell you that it should be a must. And you'll see here there's also an option for all fruit, so I'm actually going to put everything into this one fermenter. So if I click that, it just grabs the weight, in this case 5 tons, and puts it over onto the right hand side. And I'll just say that we're getting 700 litres per ton to fill that up to 3,500 litres. Okay, so I've just got that one in there and crushed, so if we just step back for a moment and search for that. So we can look up the vessels tab there. And narrow it down so I can go for in use and tanks, and that'll give me obviously everything that's filled, and you see down the bottom there we've got F3. So this one's actually showing a little M icon because it's a must still. And if I open it up, you'll be able to see that obviously the M icon there and the fraction type as well, so that we know kind of what stage we're at with it. Okay, so if we move on to, I guess, fermentation and managing that, can be quite straightforward if you simply want to just click the start little play button here to start ferment. So you just have to find a little ferment tile. So this is one of the options, and it will just really ask what days the fermentation started. So if it's as of today, once we save this, it will now count this wine as fermenting. You'll see that the little status has changed, and you've got a little stop icon there. So if you do need to stop it at whatever point, it'll go through the same sort of process. And then if you do as well go into our operations clipboard anywhere, there is a start ferment job, so it does the exact same screen that we looked at. So if you hide the ferment tile or anything like that, you can go straight through the operations and start it that way. So that's one of the ways to start a ferment. The other option is actually you can inoculate it by making some additions. So I might go back to my... that's why I couldn't find it. I did the wrong code. If we go to 2021 Chardonnay, we've got these ones here. So they're unfermented, and it's in two different tanks, both unfermented at the moment. So what I might do is actually use the multi-addition operation, and I'll actually add a line to include both of those tanks. So I'll just put in the batch code and select F2. So I've got F1 and F2 there. And what we could do is we could again use an additive template. I haven't got one set up, but if you use an additive template, it does have the option to allow you to, I'll just try to modify this crush adds, but it does allow you to use this cause treatment option, and everyone will have the treatment option of start ferment and stop ferment as well. So if you need to start a fermentation, it really just has to apply this product treatment, as we call it. So you can have the additive template already linked to that to do that job for you. So anytime you use the template, it'll start a fermentation. Similarly, you can do it with the individual additive, and that's probably something you want to make sure you set up. So I'll go to that in a moment, but what we might do is just clear out these. And you'll see here I've got a whole range of yeasts, and I can just select either one of those. But the main thing is, again, that start ferment. So if you see it in this box, it will actually start fermentation on a particular batch. And so I'll just go ahead and complete the job. And so you see that one's now fermenting. So because I had the treatment applied, that's started the fermentation. So one thing of setup that we missed a little bit earlier is just in our winemaking section is the additives. And so to make sure that that's automatically happening anytime you inoculate, you want it to start fermentation. If you come into the additive section and find your yeasts, again we've got the cause treatment option. So just go through each and every one of those and select start ferment. It'll automatically do it. You don't have to worry about it and go through manually starting each of them, as long as you've got that selected in there. Alright, so now that that's a couple of those are fermenting, we can jump back to our vessels tab here. And the one benefit of this vessels tab is the little save searches. So there will be some sort of default ones that most of you will have, and they will include things like wines in ferment or unfermented juices. So you can really go through and make sure that you've got an eye on these and you're actually processing them through the steps. So if I click wines in ferment as an example, we'll see that we've got those 2021 batches there. What I might do to stop confusing myself as well, I did make the classic typo of getting the wrong year. So I've got a 2021 batch, but I obviously called it 2020, and I guarantee I won't be the only one to do that. So to change that code, I can click this little icon here, and I can just update the name. So because it's only in the one tank and it's only relating to that one, I will make life easier for myself, and that's now 2021. And we'll just go back into our wines in ferment. Alright, that's looking better. So with this list, I want to keep an eye on what's fermenting, just so I know what to do with it. So I might want to actually start recording some ferment rounds and have those recorded. So I can click the little drop down here and select all those fermenting wines. And if I use the actions button, we've got the option here for lab work. And I can then request that we do a ferment round. So I've already got a predefined analysis template, which has just got my temp and bome. So in doing that, that'll generate a job for each of those, and some lab labels too, if you like. So now I can actually go around and put in the results for those. And because I've put them through there, we'll actually be able to look at our lab console and see those ferment rounds. So you can just go through and type those in through there and save those. So that's one way to do it. Obviously, you can just do your normal analysis through work orders as you would be doing. And again, the app is fairly useful for that. So we'll take a look at that pretty shortly. Alright, cool. So obviously you'll go through putting your analysis in these batches, either via just what we've looked at there or via the app. And one of the benefits is obviously the lab section here. So you'll be able to look at those ferment charts in here. So if I just quickly record analysis, so it's very similar to the block version of these. So once you've got some results in, they'll just show up along this screen here, and you can keep clicking plus result and putting more and more results in. But the little chart option here will give you that sort of information on a nice chart. So obviously the more you put in, the nicer your chart will be, and there's options in the reporting console as well that you can get to and do the same thing. Alright, cool. So that's getting our lab results in. Now we have kind of looked at how to stop a ferment as well by how we started it, because it's exactly the same way. So you can stop it using that option there, or again using a treatment, whether it's via an addition or another mean, you can stop ferment. So that's kind of the same process. You'll see stop ferments in there. So that's really whatever point you decide, alright, I want to call this fermented. You just have to go through one of those steps to actually achieve that. With this must here, there is an additional step that we need to go through. So you'll see that we've got a press cycle operation. So we want to actually press this off its skins, and you'll see it's got the 5 tons still there, and we want to put that sort of to its final volume once this is all done. And the press is pretty much just a transfer. There's nothing too different to it other than a couple of little boxes that we'll look at. So obviously the first one's the press here. Again, I've just got the one press, but if you're using multiple different presses, you can say which one was used. I'll just empty out that fermenter, all 3,500 litres that I put in, and we'll just go to a different tank. So I'll put this into F5. It copies over the batch code. You can change that if you like by just clearing it out and creating a new one. And we've got the option here to change the fraction type. So it's currently must. As once we press it off, it will no longer be a must. So we can call it, I guess, any of those other options that suit how you want to see things. I'll call mine combined. And it does give you the option to stop the ferment at this point as well. So if it's being pressed off and you want to say it's no longer fermenting, you can click that option and say I'll keep it fermenting just for the sake of it. And we'll put in our volume there of 3,600 litres. And again, you could go into multiple different vessels at this point, and it will give us our loss or gain based on obviously the outs and ins of that. Once this is pressed off, you'll be able to look at your extraction rate for this fruit intake. So the extraction rate will be calculated off this volume here for your reds. For the whites, it'll be calculated based off what you entered on the extraction, the first step. So you need to make sure that you actually crush your red fruit to a must, and then record a press operation. Unfortunately, every year we have people that forget to press them off and don't get some nice extraction rates. So if there's one piece of advice I could give you, is make sure that you do actually press your red fruit off, so that way you can have a look at the extraction rates, and it should be exactly as you expect it, and that way you can obviously see how much volume you were getting on a per year basis. If you completely forget about it, it's not too helpful. Alright, I do not want to stop my ferment, so I'll select ignore, and there we go. So that is pressed off now. So if I look that one up, it's just got the little W icon there for a wine. So that will now have our 3,600 litres and be in a different tank. Alright, cool. So that kind of ends a lot of the desktop side of things, of the jobs and everything I'm going to enter. I guess before we move on to the app, there are a couple of little things that we'll have a look at, of just if you make a mistake, how to fix them up. There's a few different things that can go wrong obviously during vintage time, and it's probably good if we cover how to adjust a lot of those. So I guess the first place we'll take a look at is the fruit intake console. There's a number of things that can go wrong in here. Typically getting the wrong tonnages, you might select the wrong block, you might double up an intake. Any number of those things that can generally be fixed up by clicking a little down arrow, and we've got the completed intakes option. So you get two options in here. So you get a reverse and you get a correct. You'll only be able to reverse a fruit intake if it's not crushed. So because I've crushed this one, it's grayed out, I can't do it. We'll come back to that in a moment. If what you need to fix up is any of the other details, you can click correct, and we've obviously got the tons here. You might have picked the wrong block, or you want to come back and add in the MOG or grading or any of that information. You can use the correct, go through and change whatever it was that you want to include. So I'll put in a MOG, and it'll just ask you for the reason for a correction. So we can put something in there and save that, and that will just update the intake to basically reflect what I've entered. So even if you've already crushed it, you can still go through and correct it. If it's the wrong block or even tonnages, it will just roll forward to update extraction rate. So for example, if you had already crushed it, the wine was moved on a long time, and you realize you got the wrong volume, or sorry, the wrong tonnage. For example, we'll get people who'll accidentally type in 6,000 tons when they meant 6,000 kilos. That happens from time to time. You can still go back and correct that as long as you got the volume right in tank. It will just reflect the change in extraction rate and fix things up. So that's not a big deal. If you need to reverse this, as I mentioned, it's grayed out for these ones. You actually just need to roll back the extraction. So if you make a mistake with a volume going into tank, and you need to maybe even remove the fruit intake, you'll just need to go into your job section here and make that change. So whether you made a mistake on the pressing or the extraction for this particular example, you just need to view it, and you've got the rollback option. So if we got this whole thing wrong, we've got wrong tank, wrong batch code, whatever it is, just click the rollback option and go through the prompts. It'll get you to confirm that you're happy to roll back, or maybe not happy, but that you need to roll back each of these options. And once that's done, it will go back to, in this case, 5 tons of Pinot fruit, and then we can use the replay option to redo it or reverse the fruit intake if that's the issue. Obviously, other things can go wrong during vintage in your data entry. So if there's anything that doesn't quite fit what I've mentioned, or you're not too sure, please reach out and get in touch with us. You can always use a little question mark icon down the bottom left-hand corner. It'll have our phone number, or you can log a support ticket to get in touch. And you can always search in this box here for support articles and sort of guides that'll walk you through some of this. So if you're not sure and you're stuck with something, whether it's just a simple question or you realize you've made a bit of a mistake, whatever it is, just let us know and we'll find a way to get it all sorted. Alright, so before we get to the app, the last thing we'll have a quick look at is just some of the reporting for the vintage period. So that's all done through the little pie chart reports section. And there's a number of different spots you'll probably want to look at. The most useful one is definitely the vintage harvest section. And within that we do have a couple of different reports to take a look at. So I guess the first one's just the crush extraction report. You can have a look at all the intakes, extraction rates and that kind of thing per intake, or you can group it by a certain thing. So if you've got a customer or a grower that wants to know, how many tons they've received or brought in and litres produced, you can generate a crush extraction report to do that. One of my favorite reports that seems to do a lot of the heavy lifting is this grape delivery report. So this will show every single intake, quite a lot of information to it, as well as the extraction rates as well, depending on sort of how you run it. So if you run it as a CSV, for example, you can do it just for the whole vintage, or you can narrow it down to the type of product or a region or any of that option. And you can even include the analysis from the fruit intake. So if you're recording it, intake analysis, you can show that. So if you need to see sugar readings as you receive it, for example, that's the way to do it. If I just click generate on that one, you'll get a report that looks something like this. So it'll give you the dates of intakes, dockets and booking numbers, the actual weights of your intakes, and it will have obviously again our block names and regions and all that kind of information. And lastly, towards the end you get fruit costs. So if you're putting that in as you go along, or if you later down the track, if you put that in, you'll be able to have a look at the cost of all your fruit that's gone into vintrace. And then the extraction rates and the extracted volume is this one here. So we got in this first example, 4100 litres, and that is 683 litres per tonne. You'll actually see the second one's the Pinot that I was talking about. So the 3600 was actually the volume on the press that I did, and that's the 720 litres per tonne. So because I pressed it off, I actually get this in here correctly. If you forget to press it, it won't show you a yes in this crushed section. You'll just get some asterisks as well to say that we can't actually work out an extraction rate because you haven't pressed that off. So it's definitely one to keep an eye on, or you won't be able to get some useful figures in there. So outside of the vintage harvest section as well, we do have the fruit samples section that we did have a look at earlier. So just remember that one's there. And we've also got a fermentation section. So if you're needing to do some other charts or just download the raw figures, we've got a couple of spreadsheets there. So if you want to do your own charts or anything like that, you can simply fill in these ones. So there's a couple of different formats that will just basically spit out all the data that you've entered. The bottom one's a little bit more configurable, so you can do it by batch or by type of fermentation, or even by template. So they'll both give you the same numbers, just in slightly different methods. Alright, so that is it for the desktop portion, I guess, of the webinar. We'll head on to the app now and have a look at recording some of the same stuff that we've already put in. We'll also be able to kind of do a few different little bits and pieces that isn't quite as easy on the desktop mode. So we'll switch over to that now. Alright, so now we'll switch over to the vintrace app, and you'll see I've already downloaded and logged in. If you haven't done so, we've got guides that should help you through it, but essentially you'll need your client code, which is generally going to be a three-letter code, and then just your same username and password to get into the app. So once you log in, you should have something similar to what I've got on here, with a little search bar and section for your work orders and harvest section. And the first thing we'll do is actually just search up a block code, and we'll start from there. So if I look up East Block A, for example, you'll see there's quite a bit of info on the screen there, but I guess the first section here is just kind of an overview of those blocks. So you'll see at the bottom there we've got 2020, the date we first harvested, the expected tonnages, and the received tonnages. So you can kind of see that. The little pencil icon for 2021 actually allows us to estimate those harvest dates, as well as the expected tonnages as well. So you can put in some of that info that we obviously did earlier. I can go straight into the app here. If we move along, you'll see there is the little beaker icon. So as we've seen, that is our lab section, and you can add results through here as well. So you can go through and put in your BOME and record those samples. So as I mentioned, if you're happy to just do it all in the app and put those samples in there, this is another way to do it instead of our sampling console. The next one over is the observation section. So again, you'll see that the expected harvest and available tonnages I just entered are showing up in here. If I tap the add observation, it'll allow me to do an assessment, or add actually a note and a photo. So if you're out in the vineyard and you want to take a photo of the fruit, you can do that from there, and it'll just use your camera icon. So you'll see the bottom right there, it's got the option to take a photo and upload that. If I go for the block assessment option, very similar to the assessment we saw earlier, just a few less fields in there, but you can include the the estimate of yields, expected dates as well, and gradings and stuff like that. So it has a lot of the same information that you can submit, and then that'll show up in the block overview, so that we can actually view that information. As we go along, the next one is actually the booking section. So we haven't got this fruit booked just yet, but if you click create a new booking, which we can do in a couple of other spots as well, you can put in the expected date and time, So the same kind of information as the desktop. I'll just do it as of the 12th, and the expected weight for that booking. So we could say we're going to get 8 tons. And once you hit create, that'll go into the schedule that we're expecting 8 tons of East Block A, and you can obviously go through and add as many bookings as you like to this particular block and have that all sort of ready to go. The bin icon here is actually the fruit intake, so we haven't actually received that fruit just yet, which we'll do in a second, but this would show basically the uncrushed fruit just sitting there waiting to be processed. And the last one is just the basic information about this block, so the vineyard region, number of rows, that kind of stuff. So all the information that we looked at in the block overview really is included on that last tab. If you're not too sure what all the icons mean when you're going through, you can always use the plus icon in the top right, and it will just give you all the different actions that you can do. So the assessments and the bookings are all kind of hiding under that, so you can go straight to hitting the plus and then entering in that information. So that's a lot of the stuff, I guess, before the fruit gets in is all the assessments and the samples and the booking of that fruit. So we'll just head back to the main screen there. I'll just jump out of my search, and you'll see the harvest a little tile down there. So if we click on that now, you'll see we've got the 2 bookings from earlier that I recorded, so the East Block C and the South Block, and then the bottom one is East Block A, which I just put on the app there for that 8 tons. So you can see that some of those have got fruit received where it says 5 of 5 tons, and then obviously our 8 tons expected is the one at the bottom. So this is kind of a little harvest calendar view. You can switch around the different days and view what's scheduled on those. So obviously there's nothing except for the 12th. In the top right hand corner again, we've got the little plus icon, so you can start receiving fruit, creating bookings, or processing fruit. So you've got those same sort of three options that you'd be using on the desktop to do it all from the app. So what we'll do is we'll go through the booking of the 8 tons that I put on this East Block A. So we can just tap into that, and it'll fill in basically all the stuff that we put on the booking already, and we can then go into either update the booking if we want to make changes down the bottom right, or we can click the bottom left receive and actually go through and put in the information of the tonnages. So when you're doing it on the app, you'll see it's got the bin scale option there. So if you click the pencil icon, you can switch between either recording in multiple bins, or you can switch to the truck scale and do it for gross and tear of your truck. So whichever one you select will be the default, but you can always use the pencil icon to swap between the two. Because I kind of did it with truck scales when I was on the desktop, I'll go to the bin scale option and we'll take a look at that. So in this mode, it'll give you the bins option. If you tap into that, it'll ask you for basically the type of bin. We don't have any bins created, so I can actually just create, we'll just call it bin 1, create that. You can put in the tear of your bins, so we'll say it's 50 kilos, and then you can also do it how many types of bins. So instead of me calling it bin 1, I could have called it big bin, small bin, blue bin, whatever you've got, and then just say that we have 5 of that type of bin. And then you can put in a total gross for those 5 bins, and you'll see there it calculates the net weight based off those 5 bins. And if you're doing it sort of individually coded, you could have bin 1 there, and then you can go bin 2, bin 3. So if you keep tapping another bin weight, that will just add up the total, and you see that sort of running across the top there as to what you've entered. So I'll just click the little pencil icon there. I can delete bin weight 2 and 3 because I'm just going to stick with those 5 bins, but if you do need to edit, you can always use that option and anywhere really throughout the app, and that will allow you to make changes. So let's click update. You see that we've got 5 bins, 4.75 tons. Again, our scales and ownership, same sort of thing, flows through, and we've also got the delivery details option. So you can put in the driver name and consignment number and that kind of stuff. and there's obviously a license plate option down there as well. Okay, so we've got the option to finish later, so you might have more fruit coming in. You're just waiting on the next lot of bins to come in, so you can come back to that later. That'll kind of save it as a pending sort of intake. If you're all done, click the review button, and you get a nice little summary here to tell you what you've just entered. So we've got obviously all that information, and we can hit the submit button, and that is done. So what it'll take you to next is the sign and send option. So what it will do is it'll give you the option. You can just ignore this by tapping the X and not do this, but you can send the grower or someone else, yourself if you like, a document of what you've just received. So you can use a little signature option there and scribble on your phone, put your signature in, and then you've got the option to email weigh tags or intake dockets to whoever you like, really. So it'll give you the grower email, your own email, and you can add in and type in emails. So once you send that off, it'll put the little signature at the bottom of the document that we had a look at earlier, and that'll get sent to whoever needs it. So if I just tap send, the weigh tags have all been emailed. So that's the fruit receival process. You'll see it's actually taken us back to block A and onto the little fruit bin tab, and that's actually just showing us that we now have that 4.75 tons to process. So it's put us straight into this screen. So if you're going straight ahead and crushing it, which we will do, you can check the little box there. If you've got multiple intakes that you've done over the day, you can crush them all together by just tapping each of those, and it should tally up at the bottom how much you've got to process, and then we can go process now. So if we go through actually crushing the fruit, it asks all the same questions as the desktop. It's just obviously laid out a little bit differently, but we can decide if we're going to do any sort of fruit processing, so whether we want to destem, whole bunch, that kind of thing, and then which crusher and press. So you can select those options there and use that equipment. We're just going to confirm the fruit intakes that we're using. If you're just crushing the whole thing like the desktop, leave it as is, but you can tap on it and say that we're only crushing a partial amount. So if you only did 4 tons, you can actually go through and do that. If we head to the next option, it's our additives. So again, you go through, select the additive, so it'll bring up the list that you've already got in your vintrace. Select your additive and just include the rate of addition. It will calculate the amount, and if you've got that stock tracking on, it will actually give you the location of your stock, so that you can actually record all that as mentioned earlier. Once we're happy with that, hit next, and it's just then providing the vessels and the batch codes and volumes that we need obviously to crush into. So we'll look up our vessels, and you'll see just on the right there's a little barcode option. So if you're actually at the vessel while you're doing this, you can scan the barcode and it'll select that tank for you. So instead of having to type while you're trying to work away, you can scan that. So we'll go into F004, and I'll just put in a batch code here, and I'll just reuse my 21 Pinot 1 code, and we'll call this a must. And you see there it's brought in a default extraction rate, so I've set that up to be 720 litres per tonne. So it's already put that in. I can change that estimated amount, it will recalculate, but we'll leave it on my default. And if you're going into multiple fermenters, again, just use the add destination, or another destination, sorry, until you've got everything required. I'll just use the pencil to delete that blank one, and we're all good to go. Before we hit review, there is also a little paperclip icon in the top right, and that will just allow you to enter in any notes and put some photos and stuff against this one. So if you've got extra things that you want to record, they're available, and throughout the app you'll see that. Click review, and we'll get that similar sort of summary screen that we saw when we did the fruit intake. If you need to go back and change it, you've got little pencil icons against the fruit, the additions, and the vessel, so you can go back and adjust those as you need. While we're on this screen, the bottom little section with a little clock that says just now, so that's kind of like entering the date and time on the desktop, so it's kind of doing the now and save option that you might be fond of. But if you click on that, it'll allow you to go and actually pick a time. So if this happened 6 hours ago and you just grabbing your phone and putting it in, you can actually go through and put the date and time in to be accurate accurate to the point you did it. So we'll tap submit, and we didn't actually provide a location for my additives, so getting a warning there, so we can go back and actually select the location. We don't have locations. Alright, well, we'll just make it easier myself and delete those. Obviously don't have any stock, so I'll just take it out and worry about that another day, and I'll submit that. Okay, so you see again we're back to block A, and it's now actually completed that processing of that fruit, so it gives me the completed heading. If you've got uncrushed parcels, that will just show in a separate section below, so you can kind of keep track of what's crushed versus what's not. But if you tap onto it, you'll be able to see all the detail that we've already gone through, so we'll know that's all where it is. If I jump back out to my harvest calendar, we can see it's a completed booking at the bottom there, and we can start searching up my batch code, and you'll see there we've got I believe we went to F004, so that's my must that I put in there. So you can open that up and it'll give you the tonnages and everything that we've recorded just against it. So that's pretty much all received, booked, received, crushed, all just using the app. So if that's your preference, it's easier to do that while you're on the go. By all means, go ahead and do it. It'll hopefully save you a bit of time and keep you away from your desk. There's plenty of other things on the app, so you'll see there's the work order section there as well, so you can actually write up work orders for a lot of the things and go through and complete it and kind of remove some of the paper. It'll sort of take precedence over that. So that's really all that we've got there for the app. So I'll just switch back over to the desktop and we'll cover our last few bits before we wrap it up. Alright, and that's pretty much everything we have time for today. So thanks everyone that joined, and as we mentioned earlier, this is headed to our YouTube channel, so if you haven't already subscribed to that, and you'll get notified, or you should get an email with the link to that as well. There are a few little bits and pieces I might just mention. We did cover a couple of these, but if you do get stuck with anything, please do reach out to us. So you can click the little question mark in the bottom left hand corner. It's got the option there to search for something, so we do have a great vintage guide on our website that covers plenty of what we did today and a whole lot more. So jump into that and take a look. You can always give us a call or log a ticket with us, and we're happy to help. If you've got any needs pre-vintage, so whether it's you would like some more logins, or you want to get your tank integration or scales integration hooked up, or you'd like to purchase a premium support package for a bit of 24/7 support, then please do reach out to us. You can call through to the sales team or email us, and we can get you sorted. So if there's anything that you think you might need before it gets too busy, now is the best time to reach out for that kind of stuff. But that brings us to the end of our session. So if there's any last minute questions, please get those in, and the team will reach out and get those answered. Thanks everyone for joining me, and I hope to see you on the next webinar, and good luck with vintage.